In the early 1960s, the comic book rack was populated entirely by deities. Characters like Superman and the Justice League were paragons of absolute justice, muscular titans who hovered above humanity without a hint of weakness. This perfection mirrored the precise image Cold War America projected to the world. It was a culture that valued an impenetrable surface of moral superiority and domestic tranquility. To maintain this image in print, an industry censorship board known as the Comics Code Authority strictly policed every panel. They ensured that no costumed hero could harbor a complex motive, make a selfish choice, or display a genuine human flaw. But that brightly colored fantasy was increasingly at odds with reality. Down on the streets of New York City, the post-war boom was giving way to a noisier, grittier, and more alienated environment. The youth culture navigating those streets found little of themselves reflected in the comic pages. To the industry executives, teenagers were commercial afterthoughts, relegated to playing goofy sidekicks who existed only to ask the adult heroes questions. The American comic industry had built its success on a gilded cage. It was printing millions of books a month, disconnected from the changing expectations of the actual generation buying them. Inside the offices of Atlas Comics, head writer Stan Lee was exhausted. Approaching 40 and feeling stuck in a company of copycats, he decided to pitch one final, bizarre idea before quitting the business entirely. His proposal centered on a protagonist named Peter Parker. Peter was ordinary. He didn't have a fortress of solitude or a billionaire's trust fund. He had money troubles, chronic unpopularity, dandruff, and allergy attacks. Publisher Martin Goodman rejected it immediately for violating strict industry formulas. First, teenagers were sidekicks, never leads. They couldn't carry a solo narrative. Second, heroes must be aspirational. He argued audiences had a biological aversion to spiders, making the name a marketing disaster. Lee was betting that the very traits his publisher feared, the flaws and the creepy associations, would be the exact points of connection for an audience that felt equally out of place. Since Goodman decided to cancel an anthology magazine called Amazing Fantasy, Lee had nothing to lose. He quietly slipped his spider concept into the final issue, number 15. The character's genesis was uncoordinated. Veteran artist Jack Kirby provided the initial structural blueprint. Kirby pulled the narrative mechanics from his earlier concepts, using the trope of an orphaned, intelligent teen who gains abilities through a laboratory accident. But Kirby's initial sketches looked too heroic. Lee handed the pages to Steve Ditko, whose awkward, slender art style stripped away the traditional glamour, leaving Peter Parker looking genuinely strange. The deviation happens the moment Peter gets his powers. Rather than dedicating his life to fighting crime, he sews a mask and goes on television to make a quick buck. Because he is focused on his own gain, he lets a burglar escape, a choice that directly leads to the murder of his Uncle Ben. The closing narration states that, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. That phrase was a life sentence for Peter, born out of the guilt that would define the series for the next 60 years. This collision of conflicting ideas worked because it offered something authentic. Teenagers and college students reading those pages finally saw their own flaws reflected in a hero. The sales numbers for that final issue were the highest in the magazine's history. The corporate establishment's ironclad rules had been proven wrong. Marvel gave the character his own series, and Lee used it to move real-world darkness into a medium previously reserved for children. Spider-Man lost fights. He faced unexpected defeats, struggled with self-doubt, and often failed to save the people closest to him, challenging the post-war myth of invulnerability. As Peter Parker questioned his own motives and realized his power couldn't fix every problem, the narrative mirrored the growing national disillusionment surrounding the Vietnam War. The pages adapted to a fracturing society. Stories explicitly tackled systemic bigotry and the civil rights movement. The creators integrated the era's generational tension directly into the series, staging student protests on Peter Parker's college campus. In 1971, Lee took his biggest risk yet by writing a 3-part storyline detailing the severe drug addiction of one of Peter's closest friends. The Comics Code Authority flatly refused to approve the issues. Marvel published them anyway. That single decision broke the institution's grip on industry censorship. This success provided the blueprint for the modern anti-hero.
Spider-Man showed that an audience would embrace a protagonist defined by their burdens, paving the way for the complex, flawed characters that dominate media today. In the end, Peter Parker moved the definition of heroism into the realm of the everyday. He showed that the most compelling stories aren't found in the triumph of gods, but in the persistent, difficult choice to be responsible when the world offers every excuse to walk away.